Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. With me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, we're going to go with an unremarkable Oregon right now. That's really what I got. It's pretty average, pretty typical, pretty consistent for this time of year. I think it's a little unremarkable. We had some beautiful weather earlier last week. Then we had a lot of rain. And now we're just back to kind of a cool, cloudy, not great, not awful. It's unremarkable. How are you doing? Welcome to the second week of December. How is everybody feeling about December? I offered in both last week's podcast episode and in Think Thursday the idea of doing a consistency type practice during the month of December, really setting yourself up using this last month of the year to really practice the idea of consistency. Then I had my group coaching call on Saturday and I asked all of them if was anybody else doing it with me, and none of them were. So I don't know what that means. I hope that some of you are practicing and using the rest of this month as an opportunity to practice something small consistently and to remind yourself that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be exactly the same every single day. And even if you forget, getting right back to it. That is kind of what is important about building a practice of consistency over time. I hope some of you are doing it with me. If not, that's okay. I will do it for all of us, I guess. So this week on the podcast, I'm actually revisiting an episode as we are heading into this later part of December and holidays and lots of things become challenging in the month of December for many people in terms of overindulging in alcohol, overindulging in desserts, overindulging in food, overindulging in spending, overindulging in, just you name it. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about that in two different ways. So today we're going to revisit the episode that I did on chasing the buzz around alcohol and chasing the buzz. And that's really a lot of science there. And this has been one of my most popular episodes over time, just people trying to understand the science behind the buzz around alcohol. And also, is it okay to feel like they like that? And I think that's a conversation that many people feel very challenged to have, and what it means to actually chase it and why that's not something that's actually sustainable nor practical. So we're revisiting that today. And then next week, I'm going to be talking about high intensity drinking. There was an article, I believe, in Newsweek that came out this month, and it talked about the difference between binge drinking and high intensity drinking. And again, really this idea of overindulging and why that seems to be so prevalent, especially during the month of December and the holidays and just in general. So I just those are the two things that I'm going to be talking about this week. We're revisiting chasing the buzz. Next week, I'm going to be talking about high intensity drinking. And during this whole time, I hope that you are really asking yourself these questions. Is what I am telling myself about whether or not I drink or not drink at any of these occasions, or because it's a stressful time during the month of December, or just because it's the traditions that we have around alcohol, I really want you to be challenging those old stories and those old beliefs. You cannot change your habits around alcohol if you do not change what you believe about alcohol. And go back, listen to some of my episodes on core beliefs, but that is really what we're talking about. And I hope that you'll get a lot out of chasing the buzz here. And then next week, when we talk about high intensity drinking, even for my non binge drinkers, all right, understanding the stories that fuel our desire to include alcohol or not include alcohol in our lives is very important. And for many of us, the holidays have a lot of tradition around alcohol. I mean, New Year's, right? And just toasting the new year with champagne. But for many people, they cannot imagine going through the holidays without alcohol. And I got to tell you, I like to include the way that I include alcohol. My holiday season is not about that. And it may have used to be. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode. I am actually traveling this week, so look for Think Thursday to come, and maybe I'll be mentioning where I am and what I'm up to. But if not, then, stay tuned for what that episode's going to be all about. And then I will see you next week for high intensity drinking, the episode on that. Have a great week, everyone. And until next time, choose peace. This week, I want to talk to you about chasing the buzz we get from alcohol. Now, you've heard me talk to you before on this podcast about changing the mindset of wanting to drink to get drunk. And this is along those same lines, but the buzz is a little more nuanced. One of the things that I hear from people all the time when they are even just thinking about reducing alcohol in their lives is that there's this competing desire with the buzz. They'll say, but I just like the feeling of being buzzed. I don't want to have to give up that buzz. And honestly, I get it because I absolutely enjoy what I would call the buzz that an alcoholic drink feels like in my brain. What I have come to understand, however, through my work in changing my relationship with alcohol is how limited that effect really is and how much I do not enjoy the consequences of chasing that buzz by over drinking. So, what do I mean by all this? I've shared the science of blood alcohol concentration a few times on the podcast. And last year I did a full episode on blood alcohol concentration. I will link it in the show notes. It's episode number 77, and it's part of the Alcohol and series. And certainly the conversation about the buzz involves understanding BAC to some degree, and specifically our own blood alcohol concentration and how the alcohol we drink impacts us. For most people now, and that means I'm going to say this means people that have not developed a tolerance to alcohol. So hold on, let's talk about tolerance for a minute. I don't think I've ever shared any of the technical definitions about tolerance on the podcast. So, a person with tolerance requires a higher blood alcohol concentration than a non tolerant person to experience some of the same effects. Basically, tolerance means that your body is suppressing its normal responses to the toxin that alcohol is. So, you're less likely to vomit, pass out, etc. Your ability to stand, walk, speak without slurring may change with tolerance. Your reaction time and peripheral vision do not improve with tolerance. So, this is a problem because you may feel less inebriated, but your reaction time is actually just as bad as it would be, at a higher BAC. And BAC and the rate at which you metabolize alcohol do not change with tolerance. This is important, okay? BAC does not change. So your blood alcohol content will be higher and you will not feel it, right? So you may not feel the effects the same, but as you drink, your BAC is still increasing. And tolerance is not a good goal, right? We do not want tolerance. Here's why. Physical damage and impairment are occurring without your knowledge. With tolerance, you feel less drunk, so you're less able to accurately judge your ability to function. For example, you may think you're okay to drive even though your reaction time and vision are impaired. Your body no longer protects you the way that it was meant to. Since you're less likely to vomit or pass out, you may reach even higher, more toxic blood alcohol concentration levels. When you develop tolerance, you can no longer experience the buzz, quote unquote, that I'm talking about. You don't get the same stimulant effects at low doses. And tolerance and withdrawal are two symptoms of alcohol use disorder. So if you are building your tolerance, you are moving toward physical addiction. All right. So ask yourself some questions about your own tolerance levels and whether or not you are developing tolerance, because that's another really strong reason to want to reduce your alcohol intake overall and also to change your relationship with alcohol. In most cases, it can take anywhere from 2 to 5 weeks of a complete period of abstinence to lower your tolerance level. And really, a period of abstinence is the most effective way to lower your alcohol tolerance. You can also lower it by drinking less over time, but it will simply take longer, right? It's kind of the way I did it. I reduced slowly, surely over time, and now my tolerance is definitely impacted. You will definitely want to note that if you do adopt the alcohol minimalist lifestyle and you routinely factor in multiple alcohol-free days, you will absolutely lower your tolerance. And it's very true for me. It's actually kind of mind-boggling to me that I used to drink 4 to 5 IPAs in a night. I recently had 2 pints of IPA. Both were not high alcohol by volume. One was only 4.5%, one was 6%. And I had plenty of food with both of them. I stopped drinking around 7 p.m., both of just those two, and I still had a terrible night's sleep. I was up from 3 to 5 a.m., which is not typical for me. And it was definitely not worth the trade-off for me, which is important for me to notice and remember, because in the moment when I've had 1 pint, it's the buzz from that 1 pint that feels like something I want to keep feeling. And it's often why I and a lot of other people that I've talked to and worked with tell me they choose to drink that other drink. They want to keep the buzz going. So the buzz, let's talk about it. What is it exactly? We're going to get a little sciencey. Drinking is, obviously societally accepted, but just like anything other drug, alcohol is that for our brains. It affects the brain. Ethanol, the remarkably simple chemical compound that gives alcoholic drinks their buzz, permeates the cells of our body and brain within minutes of consumption. And there is still a lot that we do not know about alcohol's effect on the brain. What we do know, people typically drink alcohol to induce this euphoria and reduce anxiety, and they frequently drink in social settings. That's the buzz. The buzz we seek in these instances is caused by multiple factors in the brain. Now, this information that I'm going to share with you comes from a few different studies. So I don't know if I'll link them all in the show notes, but different studies that I got all of this from. So the first thing, alcohol may cause us to become disinhibited by dampening activity in parts of our frontal cortex, which is important, as we know, the prefrontal cortex, for all of the logical executive control functions, such as inhibiting behaviors that we don't want to do. By inhibiting our inhibitions, alcohol makes us feel more stimulated. Number 2, being pleasantly buzzed also releases dopamine and increases activity in the striatum, which is a key brain region associated with rewarding stimuli, right? So that's the reward center. That's the habit part of the brain. Number 3, alcohol affects the emotion centers of the brain as well. In one study, alcohol dampened the neural responses in the amygdala to negative facial expressions, which may be a reason drinking can serve as a social lubricant, a bit of liquid courage, which helps us become less sensitive to rejection or social anxiety. Now, here's the interesting part to me. The intoxicating powers of alcohol are not pharmacological alone. They're not just all of those brain chemicals that I just talked about. Brains like to hang out with other brains, basically. And what that looks like when you drink varies dramatically depending on whether you're by yourself or whether you're in a social situation. Being around others in a social setting can itself be intoxicating, and alcohol seems to amplify those good feelings. It also provides a signal to others that we are letting our hair down when we drink around them, right? And it does not require an intoxicating dose to see those mood effects. So, that again was studied, which is very interesting. Now, if you've listened to this show for any length of time, or if you've read my book, you've heard me talk about alcohol's biphasic effect. Okay. And what that means is that initially in low doses, it produces this buzz that where we feel stimulated and disinhibited and we enjoy talking with other people. We feel like we can dance or converse forever and up to a point, right? And the point is actually pretty clinical. We it's very much based on blood alcohol content. It's approximately 0.055% to 0.06%. And this is where the enjoyable effects of alcohol decline and wear off. And in fact, you may feel sleepy, flat, kind of disconnected as you drink more. You may get moody or sick or make unwise decisions. And here's what's important to know. From that point, when you start to feel the negative consequences, there's no going back to get the peak buzz. Drinking more will only take you deeper into the negative consequences territory. Scientifically, here's what's going on. Even though alcohol is a depressant, it's a unique depressant in that the initial feelings have that buzz. As your blood alcohol content rises from 0 to 0.055, 0.06%, as it goes up at a fairly constant rate until we've reached that peak buzz percentage, right? We're getting all of these fun feelings, the feelings that you're feeling more chatty, that you're feeling, more flirtatious, that you're feeling more, like you're having fun, right? But you also feel still in control. And then as your body passes that peak buzz point, you start to experience all of alcohol's changes. With each subsequent dose of alcohol, the stimulant effects, those positive stimulating effects decline, and the depressant effects become more pronounced. So you're going to get sleepier. Your mood's going to start slumping. You're going to start saying things potentially that you don't want to say. You're going to maybe feel sick, right? Hey there, it's Molly taking a quick break to talk with you about Sunnyside. You all know that Sunnyside is my app of choice and my recommendation for a tool to help you create sustainable change around your drinking. One of the things that I love about Sunnyside is their commitment to improving the user experience, and that has been a constant since I started working with them nearly 3 years ago now. Since June this year, they have added the Android version of their iOS app, so now it's available for Apple users and all Android users. It's the same Sunnyside experience across all of those devices, and it's just another example of their commitment to improving the user experience. Another example would be the fact that now you can set it up for push notifications. So you can take all of the daily texts, the reminders, and put them into a push preference so that you determine how you want to receive the support from Sunnyside. I would love for you to check it out. Go to www.sunnyside.co/Molly to get started with a 15-day free trial today. Very interestingly enough, alcohol's effects are more acute in new environments and situations, research shows. That's because our tolerance is partly environmental. We are more tolerant of alcohol in familiar situations. This was another study done in 2011. In contrast, drinking in an unfamiliar setting tends to lower our tolerance. All right. So think about that in how you use alcohol. In new situations, it's especially important to remember to pace yourself because you could get more intoxicated than you would in your usual setting, even if you're drinking the same amount. That was that was fun research to come upon. So again, the biphasic effect actually occurs within our brain, right? So it's happening, that biphasic. When I say it's biphasic, I'm talking about the way that the alcohol chemicals impact our brain. The brain center that inhibits our actions is the first to be affected by alcohol. So without the inhibiting center, the other areas somewhat go wild and we feel a little uninhibited. Later, the brain functions that allow us, that those same brain functions that allow us to act bolder and less shy, also get depressed. And that is when we tend to get quieter, slump off, right? Now, blood alcohol content charts and calculators are useful. I actually know people in my Facebook group, people coaching clients that I've worked with use breathalyzers to check their blood alcohol content. That's obviously much more accurate, but they're still limited, right? They estimate how much alcohol, at least the charts and the calculators. Those charts and calculators are going to estimate how much alcohol someone of your body type and sex can typically have before experiencing certain effects. But as we've talked about many times, they don't account for various other factors that may influence your alcohol tolerance, like your age, your health, your fatigue level, medications that you've taken, food, how much food you've consumed, and whether or not you're in a familiar environment. That's a new one to me. And you may need to adjust the blood alcohol percentage to account for, right, how long you're drinking and all of these other factors. Now, that's what's happening in our brains and socially as we achieve this quote unquote peak buzz from a scientific standpoint. And then if we keep drinking and we go past the blood alcohol content of 0.055% to 0.06, so, it's nuance there, our brain functions will get more and more depressed. And what has been shown in multiple studies is that when people try to keep the buzz going, that they feel from that initial lower amount of alcohol, instead of actually being able to feel that initial feeling again, what they feel is increasingly tired, sick, sleepy, sad, and so on. It's not possible. And what I really want you to hear and internalize is that, number one, the next drink does not make the buzz better. I'm not going to say that it won't increase the effects, but it won't make things better. It will actually make it far more likely that you will experience all the negative consequences of overdrinking. And number two, when you are buzzed, quote unquote, you are still capable of choosing not to have another drink. When you are in the peak buzz stage, you are still 100% capable of choosing to not have another drink. Even though your prefrontal cortex is slightly inhibited, you absolutely still can tap into your long-term goals and decide to remember what the science of alcohol is telling us. When our lower brains, when the toddler brain and the reward center start telling us that we should have another one, we can absolutely challenge that thinking with the truth about what overdrinking means for our brains. We have to be willing to challenge what we've trained our brains to believe, as well as what we've trained them to desire, right? Science helped me do that. And it still does. It still does. I do. I am right there with you. Sometimes when I've had that first drink, it sounds really good to have another one. And if I don't eat enough, if I'm tired, if I'm in a new place, it may affect me more. And if it affects me more, it's more likely that I'm going to have those negative consequences. Now, I'm not talking about hangovers, but guess what? When you factor in multiple alcohol free days into your life and you start to benefit from the higher mood quality, you get better sleep, you have more energy. When you start experiencing all that, you don't want to trade that off. Now, some people ask, well, why drink at all? Well, I enjoy that initial buzz. I do. And it's okay. And I'm willing to make those trade offs. I've done the research. I understand the cost risk benefit analysis that I am willing to make when it comes to alcohol and the trade-offs that I'm not willing to make. And that's really what my goal is for you too, is to help you decide what is peaceful for you. For me, being an alcohol minimalist, enjoying alcohol at low risk levels and doing so in a way that aligns with my long-term goals, that is where peace lives for me. And this science and making these decisions and being able to have the autonomy to make those decisions works for me. It's not decision fatigue. It's just that's what I do. I plan ahead. I know I'm making the decision to be 70% alcohol free this year, and it feels great. And I hope you hear me. It's okay to enjoy that buzz from alcohol, in my opinion. But do make sure that you remind your brain that any therapeutic effect is really limited. After that, the negative consequences will outweigh any positive buzz that you've experienced. Oh, and of course, all those things that we talked about the buzz helping us feel, being more chatty, flirtatious, fun, jovial, all of those feelings are available to us without alcohol. We can create any of those feelings with our thoughts. Does the buzz feel good? Well, I think that's pretty well proven given alcohol's popularity, right? We could still enjoy alcohol in minimal ways, and we can also enjoy all the positive effects of alcohol-free days. If you want to learn more about my 70% alcohol-free plan, come on over to the Facebook group. It's free, and it's the Alcohol Minimalist. Change your drinking habits. Search for it. There's always a link in the show notes. All right, that's all I have for you this week, my friends. Until next time, choose peace. Hey, thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 3 ways. You can learn about them over at www.mollywatts.com/workwithme. Or better yet, reach out to me directly. It's molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and discuss what's best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going.